The cargo freighter Perth's gambit shook. Like a washing machine with a broken spin cycle, Captain Sarah Chun gripped her coffee cup tighter as another violent tremor ran through the ship's hull. The lights flickered, and somewhere in the engine room, something that definitely should not be sparking was definitely sparking. "Jerry, what's our status?" she called to her chief engineer, who was currently upside down under the main console with his legs sticking out at odd angles. "Well, Captain, the good news is we're not dead yet," came Jerry Rodriguez's muffled voice from beneath the control panel. "The bad news is our FDL drive just decided to throw the mother of all tantrums." Chun sighed and took another sip of coffee. It was Tuesday, and Tuesdays always seem to bring the worst kind of problems. "How bad are we talking here?" Jerry's head popped up, his graying hair sticking in all directions, and a streak of engine grease across his forehead. "Remember that time in college when you tried to make pancakes after drinking all night and somehow set the kitchen on fire? That bad? Worse." The ship lurched suddenly, and everyone on the bridge grabbed onto whatever was nearby. Navigator David Okafor looked up from his screens with the kind of expression usually reserved for discovering your favorite restaurant has been replaced by a tax office. "Captain, we're being pulled into an uncontrolled hyperspace jump," Okafor said, his usually calm voice carrying just a hint of concern. "I can't stop it." "Where are we headed?" Chun asked, settling back into her captain's chair with the resignation of someone who had dealt with far too many Tuesdays in her career. "That's the thing," Okafor replied, adjusting his glasses and squinting at the navigation display. "According to these readings, we're not headed anywhere that should exist. This sector isn't on any of our star charts." Dr. Alice Kim looked up from her medical station, where she had been reorganizing her supplies for the third time that week. "Should we be worried?" Chun shrugged. "We're flying a 30-year-old cargo hauler held together with duct tape and hope through space that could kill us in about 1,000,000 different ways on any given day. What's one more thing to worry about?" The hyperspace jump felt like being inside a blender filled with lightning. The crew held on as reality decided to take a coffee break and physics went on vacation. When the shaking finally stopped and the lights came back on, they found themselves floating in normal space. Again, everyone still in one piece. Chun called out, checking her instruments. "Define one piece," groaned Chef Miguel Martinez from the galley where he had been trying to prepare lunch when the universe had other plans. "I mean, are all your important bits still attached and working?" "Then yes." Captain Chun looked at the main display and frowned. Instead of the familiar emptiness of space they usually traveled through, they were surrounded by stars she didn't recognize. But that wasn't the strange part. The strange part was the massive alien ship sitting directly in front of them. It was huge, easily 10 times the size of their little freighter, and covered in weapons that looked like they could turn a planet into a very expensive paper. Wait, the design was all sharp angles and aggressive curves, like someone had asked a very angry artist to design ship while having a bad day. "Well," Chun said, taking another sip of coffee. "That's new, Captain," Okafor said, his voice carefully neutral. "I'm reading massive energy signatures from that vessel. Whatever it is, it's definitely not human." "Should I hail them?" asked Communications Officer Lisa Park, her hand hovering over the controls. "Might As well, Chun replied, we're already here and they've probably noticed us by now. Before Park could open the channel, their communication system crackled too. Life, a voice that sounded like gravel being processed through a meat grinder, filled the bridge. Unknown vessel, you have violated the sacred boundaries of the hegemonic dominion. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Chung raised an eyebrow. Sacred boundaries. That's a bit dramatic, isn't it? Jerry stuck his head up from under another console where he had been trying to fix whatever had broken during their unexpected trip. Did they just threaten to blow us up on a Tuesday? That's just rude. I know, right? Chun agreed. She keyed the communication system. Unknown alien vessel. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the cargo freighter Perth Gambit. We seem to have had a navigation error. Could you point us toward the nearest repair station? There was a long silence from the alien ship. Chum could almost feel the confusion radiating across the vacuum of space. Did you not hear our demand for surrender? The growly voice finally responded. Oh, I heard it. Chun replied, checking her watch. It's just that we've got a delivery deadline to meet. Mars colony is expecting their medical supplies by Friday, and if we're late again, Administrator Johnson is going to have our heads. Have you ever dealt with angry colonial administrators? They're worse than tax auditors. Another pause. This one longer. You dare to ignore the might of Admiral Vixthara of the Dominion Fourth Fleet? Chun looked around at her crew. Dr. Kim was calmly organizing bandages. Martinez was making sandwiches despite the fact they had just been threatened with destruction. Jerry was back to fixing things and Akifer was trying to figure out where they were on his star charts. Look, Admiral Chun said into the communicator, I'm sure you're very important and your fleet is very impressive, but we're really just trying to do our job here. Is there any chance you could give us directions to the nearest space station? We'll buy you drink and call it even. The alien ship's weapons began to power up, painting per Gambit with targeting lasers. Captain Park said quietly, I think they're serious about this whole surrender thing. Chun looked at the weapons readings on her display and shrugged. Jerry, did you remember to file the insurance paperwork before we left Earth? Of course, Captain. I'm not an amateur. Good. Lisa asked them if they take credit cards. Admiral Vixthara had conquered 43 worlds. In his career, he had seen entire species fall to their knees in terror at the mere sight of his ships. He had watched proud civilizations crumble when faced with the awesome power of the Dominion. What he had never seen was a species ask if they accepted credit cards while being held at gunpoint. The human ship had been tractored into his flagship's docking bay without resistance. The humans had actually seemed grateful for the ride with their captain mentioning something about saving fuel costs. Now they sat in his interrogation chamber looking around with what could only be described as tourist-level interest. The interrogation chamber was Vexthara's pride and joy. The walls displayed scenes of conquered worlds burning, reality warping devices created, impossible geometries that had driven lesser minds to madness. The air itself seemed to whisper threats in a dozen dead languages. It was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. The humans appeared to be raiding the decorations. The special effects are pretty good, said the one called Rodriguez, examining a device that projected the Screams of the damned, though the acoustics could use some work. You're getting a lot of echo in here. The female called Dr. Kim was studying the wall displays with professional interest. These burn patterns suggest third-degree thermal damage. Did you provide medical aid to the survivors? Survivors, Vexar translator struggled with the concept. In Dominion conquests, there were rarely survivors to treat. Well, yes. After the finding stops, someone has to help the wounded. That's basic medical ethics. Captain Chun was examining the reality-warping torture device with the kind of expression mechanics got when looking at someone else's shoddy repair work. This dimensional phase inverter is completely out of alignment, she said to Rodriguez. No wonder it's making that grinding noise. Vexar's 4 eyes blinked independently. That device is meant to break the minds of our enemies by showing them impossible realities. Yeah, but it's doing it inefficiently, Rodriguez replied, pulling out a small toolkit from his pocket. The power coupling is loose, and you've got the stabilizers running backwards. Mind if I take a look? You wish to improve our torture device? Well, if you're going to do something, might as well do it right, Chun said with a shrug. Though, honestly, have you considered just talking to people instead of trying to break their minds? It's usually faster and doesn't require all this fancy equipment. Vexar felt something he had never experienced in 3 centuries of conquest. Confusion. You show no fear of our power, should we? That's the one, called Akefer, looking up from where he was studying star charts with several junior navigation officers. This is actually quite fascinating. Your jump calculations are very advanced, though you're using a lot more energy than necessary. Have you considered using gravitational slingshots to improve efficiency? The navigation officers clustered around Akefer, asking questions in rapid succession. Vexar noticed that they seemed more excited about discussing math than they had ever been about conquest. I do not understand, Vexthara said, his voice carrying undertones that had made entire star systems surrender. Every species we encounter recognizes our superiority and submits. Why do you not fear us? Dr. Kim looked up from where she was bandaging a cut on a guard's arm. The guard had injured himself on a weapon display, and she had immediately started providing medical care without being asked. Fear you? Why would we fear you? She asked. You haven't actually done anything threatening yet. You've just shown us around your ship and talked about how powerful you are. We have demanded your surrender. Well, yes, but demanding something and actually doing something are different things, Chun replied reasonably. My mother demands I call her more often, but she doesn't threaten to blow up my ship. About it, Chef Martinez had somehow found his way to the ship's food preparation area and was in deep conversation with the alien cooks. The smell of something that actually smelled edible was beginning to drift through the ventilation system. This was causing a minor riot among the crew who had never experienced food that didn't taste like recycled cardboard. Your food preparation facilities are impressive, Martinez called out, but you're not using nearly enough seasoning. And what's with these ration cubes? They taste like sadness mixed with plastic. Ration cubes are efficient, Vexthara replied automatically. Efficient maybe, but your crew looks miserable. Happy workers are productive workers. Here, try this. Martinez handed the Admiral something that looked like a ration. Cube but smelled like actual food. Vexara tentatively tasted it and felt his worldview shift slightly. Food could taste good. This is impossible, he muttered. It's just basic cooking. Martinez replied, salt, pepper, a little garlic. Amazing what a difference it makes when you actually care about what you're feeding people. Rodriguez had somehow improved the efficiency of 3 different ship systems while they had been talking. The lights were brighter, the air circulation was better, and several warning alarms that had been going off constantly for years had finally stopped. Your ship is in pretty good shape overall, he told the engineering crew that had gathered around him. Just needs some basic maintenance. When's the last time you serviced these power couplings? The alien engineers looked at each other in confusion. Maintenance was performed when things broke, not before. You perform maintenance to prevent breaking, one of them asked. Of course, it's cheaper than replacing everything when it fails. Plus, preventive maintenance means fewer emergency repairs. In the middle of a battle, Vexthar watched his crew interacting with the humans and felt a growing sense of unease. His officers were asking questions, learning things, looking happy. When had he last seen his crew look happy about anything other than conquest? What manner of beings are you? He finally asked Captain Chun. Chun looked around the chamber, where her crew was casually helping improve various ship systems while making friends with former enemies. We're humans, she replied simply. We haul cargo for a living, nothing too exciting, but you show no fear of superior force. You improve our technology without being asked. Your healer tends to our wounded without reward. What great empire do you serve that has made you so confident? Chun laughed. Empire we can barely agree on. Pizza toppings back home. We've got about 200 different countries, half of them arguing with the other half about everything from trade policies to what constitutes proper breakfast food. Then, what power protects you? Chum thought about it for a moment. I guess we protect each other. It doesn't always work perfectly, but we keep trying. Vithar stared at her. You have no central authority, no supreme leader. We tried that a few times. It didn't end well. Turns out giving one person too much power makes them kind of crazy. So now we vote on things and argue a lot. It's messy, but it mostly works. The Admiral felt the foundations of his understanding beginning to crack. How could a species without central authority, without fear, without empire be so capable? I must report this to High Command, he said quietly. Sure thing, Chun replied. Can we get those directions to a repair station now? We've really got to get moving on this. Delivery. High Command was not pleased with Admiral Vexara's report. In fact, High Command was experiencing something very close to panic, which was unusual, because High Command had not panicked about anything in roughly 400 years. You're telling me, said Supreme Marshal Krath, her multiple voice boxes creating a harmony of disbelief, that these humans showed no fear of our most advanced psychological warfare techniques, none whatsoever. Supreme Marshal Vexthara replied through the quantum communication link they offered to fix them instead, and they improved our ship systems significantly. Our engineers are calling it the Great Awakening. They've never realized equipment could work better with proper maintenance. Marshal Kraft made a sound Like grinding metal, what about our displays of conquered worlds, our monuments to Dominion power? They asked. If we provided medical aid to survivors, and suggested that talking to people might be more efficient then. Mind-breaking, the silence on the communication link stretched for several minutes. Finally, Marshal Kraft spoke. Again, her voice carefully controlled. Admiral, in your professional opinion, what kind of civilization could produce beings this unimpressed? Vithar had been thinking about that question for hours. Supreme Marshal, I believe we may have encountered representatives of a civilization that has seen far worse than anything we can do. Back aboard the Perth's Gambit, now docked inside the Dominion flagship, the humans were completely unaware of the panic spreading through the upper levels of Galactic government. They were too busy being helpful. Rodriguez had somehow convinced the alien engineering staff to let him redesign their main power distribution system. See, the problem is you're running everything through these massive central nodes, he explained to a group of fascinated alien engineers. If one fails, you lose power to half the ship, but if you distribute the load across multiple smaller nodes, he sketched out a diagram on a piece of scrap metal with a welding torch. The alien engineer studied it with growing excitement. This is impossible, one of them said. Our best designers said central distribution was the only way. Maybe they just never tried anything else, Rodriguez suggested. Sometimes the best solution is the one nobody thought of because it seems too simple. In the medical bay, Dr. Kim had discovered that the ship's medical facilities were designed primarily for treating battle wounds with very little consideration for preventive care or basic health maintenance. When did your crew last have physical examinations? She asked the chief medical officer, being that looked like a cross between a spider and the filing cabinet. Physical examinations, basic health checkups, seeing how everyone's doing, catching problems before they become serious. The alien doctor's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. We treat injuries when they occur, but what about making sure injuries don't occur in the first place? Dr. Kim spent the next several hours teaching the medical staff about the revolutionary concept of preventive medicine. By the end of her impromptu lecture, half the ship's crew was lining up for checkups they didn't know they needed. Meanwhile, Chef Martinez had started what could only be described as a culinary revolution. Word had spread through the ship that the human could make ration cubes taste like actual food. A crowd had gathered in the galley, watching in amazement as he worked. The secret, he explained while seasoning what had previously been a flavorless protein cube, is caring about what you're making. Food isn't just fuel, it's comfort, it's culture, it's one of the things that makes life worth living. An alien cook that resembled very tall mushroom raised a tentacle. But efficiency in food preparation allows for maximum resource allocation to military operations. Sure, but what's the point of military operations if your people are miserable? Martinez replied, stirring something that smelled like heaven. Happy people work better, fight better, live better. And happiness often starts with a good meal. Navigator Akefer had accidentally revolutionized the Minion navigation systems by pointing out that their hyperspace calculations were using outdated physics models. You're still calculating for space as a flat plane, he told the navigation team while drawing equations in the air. With a light stylus, but if you account for quantum fluctuations and gravitational microlensing, you can reduce travel time by 30% and energy consumption by almost half. The alien navigator stared at his calculations as if he had just explained how to turn lead into gold. These equations, where did you learn them? Basic navigation school, Akefer replied. With a shrug, this is standard stuff for anyone hauling cargo through deep space. You have to know how to calculate efficient routes or you'll go broke on fuel costs. By the time Admiral Vestar received new orders from High Command, his ship was running more efficiently than it had in decades. His crew was healthier and happier than he had ever seen them, and several alien officers had asked if they could transfer to human ships when the Perth's Gambit left. The new orders were simple: escort the humans to the capital world so the Emperor himself could meet them. Captain Chun Backstar said, finding the human leader in the ship's engine room where she was helping Rodriguez install improved safety protocols. The Emperor has requested an audience with you and your crew. Chen looked up from a power coupling she was examining. The Emperor: that sounds important. Is this going to take long? Because we really do have that delivery deadline. The Emperor is the supreme ruler of 847 worlds, Lexar explained. When he requests an audience, one does not concern themselves with delivery deadlines. 847 worlds, Chun whistled. That's quite a management challenge. I have trouble keeping track of 6 crew members and 1 cargo ship. How does he handle the paperwork? Vexthor realized he had never considered the administrative challenges of ruling nearly 1,000 worlds. I am not certain. Well, I suppose we can spare a day or two, Chun said finally, but after that we really need to get moving. Mars colony gets cranky when their medical supplies are late. As the Perth's Gambit was prepared for escort to the capital, emergency communications were flying between Dominion military bases across 3 sectors. The message was always the same: unknown super species had infiltrated Dominion space. They showed no fear of superior technology. They improved everything they touched. They were clearly representatives of a civilization so advanced that Dominion power meant nothing to them. Prepare for possible invasion. Consider defensive strategies. Whatever you do, do not attempt to intimidate them. They were unimpressed by torture devices and offered to fix them instead. Captain Chun, unaware that she had just become the most feared human in galactic history, was in her quarters trying to figure out how to explain to Mars colony administrator Johnson why their medical supply delivery was going to be late. Dear Administrator Johnson, she dictated to her computer, we have experienced a slight delay due to unexpected diplomatic contact with a local galactic empire. Please be assured that your supplies are safe and we will resume delivery as soon as we finish helping them reorganize their government structure. She paused, then added, also their food was terrible, so Martinez is teaching them how to cook. We may have accidentally started a culinary revolution. Will provide full report upon return to Earth. Chun leaned back in her chair and sighed. It was definitely going to be one of those weeks. The revolution began with a sandwich. Chef Martinez had finally found the palace kitchen, and after one look at what passed for food in the Imperial household had immediately set about fixing the problem. Within an hour, the smell of actual cooking was drifting through the palace corridors. Within 2 hours, kitchen staff who had never tasted anything but processed nutrition paste were crying tears of joy over a simple grilled cheese sandwich. "This is what food can taste like?" asked the head kitchen supervisor, a being that looked like a very polite octopus. "This is what food should always taste like," Martinez replied, showing him how to properly season soup. "Food is love made edible when you feed people well. You're telling them they matter." Word spread through the palace like wildfire. The emperor's personal guard, who had spent centuries surviving on military rations, quietly abandoned their posts to stand in line for Martinez's cooking. For the first time in the recorded history of the Dominion, imperial troops were smiling. Meanwhile, Dr. Kim had set up an impromptu medical clinic in one of the throne room side chambers. Centuries of rule through fear and intimidation had created a palace full of people with stress-related health problems, but no one had ever thought to treat them. "Why did you last have a full night's sleep?" she asked Admiral Vixthara, who had accompanied them to the capital. "Sleep is a sign of weakness," he replied, automatically, then paused, though cannot remember the last time I felt truly rested. "Sleep is a biological necessity," Dr. King corrected gently. "Your body needs time to repair itself. Chronic sleep deprivation leads to impaired judgment, weakened immune systems, and increased risk of accidents." She prescribed 8 hours of sleep and a vacation. The admiral stared at the prescription like it was written in an alien language, which technically it was. Rodriguez had somehow gained access to the palace's central systems and was busy fixing 4 centuries worth of accumulated technical problems. The lights worked better, the air was cleaner, and several emergency systems that had been broken for decades were finally functional again. "Your maintenance protocols are basically non-existent," he told the chief of palace operations, while rewiring a critical power junction. "When's the last time anyone did a safety inspection on these systems?" "Safety inspection, checking to make sure everything works properly and nobody gets hurt. This power coupling here, it's been running hot for probably 50 years, could have electrocuted someone or started a fire or taken out life support for half the palace." Chief of Operations made a note to implement regular safety inspections. It had never occurred to him that preventing problems might be easier than fixing them after people died. Navigator Akafer had been cornered by the entire Imperial Strategic Planning Department, who were desperate to understand his navigation techniques, but the conversation had somehow shifted from hyperspace calculations to governmental efficiency. "Your administrative structure is incredibly complex," Akafer observed, studying their organizational charts. "You've got 17 different departments that all do basically the same thing, and none of them talk to each other. Have you considered streamlining? Making things simpler and more efficient? Back home we had to learn this lesson the hard way. Bureaucracy that doesn't serve the people just creates frustration and waste." Captain Chen, meanwhile, was having the strangest conversation of her career with Emperor Malachar himself. The ruler of 847 worlds had asked her to explain democracy, and she was doing her best, despite having no formal training in political science, so everyone gets to vote, the emperor asked, sitting on his throne of crystallized screams, but somehow managing to look less intimidating than he had an hour ago. Everyone gets a say in how they're governed, Chun confirmed. It's messy, and people argue a lot, but it's better than having one person make all the decisions for everyone else. But what if they make the wrong decisions? Then they learn from their mistakes and make better decisions next time. The thing about freedom is that it includes the freedom to be wrong as long as you're not hurting other people, and this works, Chun shrugged. Most of the time, we still have problems, but we solve them together instead of having one person decide everything for everyone else. It's slower than dictatorship, but it's more stable in the long run. The emperor was quiet for a long moment. I have been making decisions for 847 worlds for 600 years. I am very tired. Maybe it's time to let other people help, Chun suggested gently. Over the next 3 days, as the humans waited for their ship to be refueled and resupplied, the palace underwent a transformation that historians would later call the Great Awakening. Kitchen staff started cooking real food. Medical staff began providing preventive care. Engineers implemented safety protocols. Administrators streamlined bureaucratic processes. Most importantly, Emperor Malachar announced his intention to transition the Dominion from an empire to a federation of democratic worlds. But Your Majesty, protested his prime minister, we rule through strength and fear. How can we maintain control if we give people freedom? Perhaps the emperor said quietly, it is time to stop controlling and start serving. The announcement sent shock waves through Dominion space. Some worlds immediately began organizing democratic elections. Others declared independence and started forming trade alliances. A few tried to maintain the old system, but found that their populations, having heard about the changes at the capital, was suddenly very interested in this voting concept. Admiral Vixthara, after his first full night's sleep in decades, submitted his resignation from the military and applied to join the new Federation diplomatic corps. He wanted to try talking to people instead of threatening them. On the 4th day, Captain Chun finally received permission to leave and complete her delivery. Are you certain you must go, Emperor Malachar asked as they prepared to depart. We could offer you positions in the new government. Your expertise would be invaluable. Thanks, but we've really got to get these medical supplies to Mars colony, Chun replied, checking her cargo manifest one last time. Besides, we're not experts in anything except hauling freight from point A to point B. You transformed an empire in 4 days. We made some suggestions and fixed a few things that were bothering us. Chun corrected, you did all the hard work of actually changing things. As the Perse Gambit finally departed the capital world, its crew was completely unaware that they had just accidentally triggered the largest political transformation in galactic history. 6 months later, the newly formed Galactic Federation sent a diplomatic mission to Earth. They arrived expecting to find the home world of a species of wise philosopher warriors who had mastered the art of benevolent governance. Instead, they found humans arguing about traffic patterns, complaining about tax rates, and engaged in heated debates about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Ambassador Vixthara Representing the Federation watched a group of humans holding protest signs that read, "Honk if you hate Mondays," and the earth is flat, and slowly began to understand why the Dominion had never stood a chance. They're not super advanced warrior philosophers, he reported back to the Federation Council. They're just people, very strange, very helpful, very stubborn people who have somehow survived everything the universe could throw at them, including themselves. Then how did they know exactly what to do to fix our empire? Vexstar thought about Captain Chen's matter-of-fact competence, Rodriguez's casual engineering genius, Dr. Kim's instinctive compassion, and Martinez's determination to feed everyone well. And Martinez's determination to feed everyone well. I think he said finally, they've just had a lot of practice at fixing things that were broken, including themselves. Meanwhile, Captain Sarah Chun was dealing with a much more immediate problem, explaining to Mars Colony Administrator Johnson why their medical supplies were 6 days late. "Dear Administrator Johnson," she dictated to her computer, "delivery completed successfully despite unexpected diplomatic complications involving the accidental overthrow of a galactic empire. All medical supplies arrived in perfect condition. Please note additional charge for diplomatic services rendered. We'll stick to normal shipping routes in future to avoid further government reorganizations." She paused, then added, "Martinez sends his regards and a recipe for proper coffee. Apparently the stuff you've been serving colonists violates several interplanetary health codes." Chun leaned back in her captain's chair and sighed. Next time she decided she was definitely taking the long route to Mars. The universe was strange enough without accidentally fixing it every time they tried to deliver medical supplies. Outside the viewports, stars looked exactly the same as they always had, but somewhere among them 847 worlds were learning that democracy was messier than dictatorship, but much more interesting. And in kitchens across the galaxy, people were discovering that food could actually taste good when someone cared about making it properly. Emperor Malachar had ruled the Dominion for over 600 years. He had personally overseen the conquest of 300 worlds. He had seen species beg for mercy, offer tribute, and collapse in despair at the mere mention of his name. What he had never experienced was someone asking if he had considered therapy. The throne room of the Imperial Palace was designed to break spirit. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, covered with stars that were actually the preserved souls of defeated enemies. The walls displayed the complete destruction of entire civilizations in horrifying detail. The throne itself was carved from the crystallized screams of a billion conquered beings, empowered by the despair of the defeated. Effect was somewhat undermined by the fact that the humans were taking pictures. "This architecture is really something," said Captain Chun, holding up her phone to get a better angle of the soul stars. "Very dramatic. Must have taken forever to install all those lights." "Those are not lights," Emperor Malachar rumbled, his voice echoing through dimensions. "Those are the eternal souls of those who dared to oppose the Dominion." Dr. Kim looked up with professional interest. "That sounds like a psychological manifestation of trauma. Have you considered grief counseling? Carrying around that much anger and pain must be exhausting." The Emperor blinked his 6 eyes in. Sequent in 6 centuries of ruling, no one had ever suggested he might need therapy. Rodriguez was examining the throne with the critical eye of someone who had spent decades fixing things. This crystallized screen technology is fascinating, but it seems really energy intensive. Have you considered switching to a more efficient power source? Solar panels are much cheaper in the long run. Silence, Malisher roared. Rising from his throne, the walls shook. Reality flickered, and the very air seemed to scream in terror. You stand before the Emperor of 847 worlds. You will show proper respect or face the consequences of your insolence. Chef Martinez looked around the throne room with obvious disappointment. Is there a cafeteria in this place? Because I skipped lunch, and that dramatic shouting just reminded me how hungry I am. There are no cafeterias. The Emperor snarled. There is only conquest and submission. That explains why everyone around here looks so thin and unhappy. Martinez observed. You really should consider investing in a good food service program. Happy employees are productive employees. Emperor Malachar decided it was time for the ultimate demonstration. He had prepared his greatest display of power, specifically for these mysterious humans. With a gesture that had once caused an entire star system to surrender, he activated the Imperial War machine. The throne room walls dissolved, replaced by holographic displays showing the true scope of Dominion power. Fleets of warships that could shatter planets, weapons that could tear holes in space itself, preserved remains of conquered home worlds. The desperate messages from species begging for mercy before their worlds were destroyed. Behold, the Emperor declared, his voice shaking the foundations of reality. This is the power of the Dominion. This is what happens to those who oppose us. Now do you understand why I must submit? Captain Chun checked her watch and sighed. Look, you're impressed. This is all very impressive, but we've got refrigerated medical supplies that are going to spoil if we don't get moving soon. Can we maybe wrap this up? The Emperor felt something crack inside his chest. You are not impressed by our displays of power? Well, it's certainly elaborate, Chan admitted, but honestly, we've seen worse. Worse, the word came out as barely a whisper. What could possibly be worse than the might of the Dominion? Navigator Akefer pulled out his tablet and started bringing up historical records. Where do we start? World War II killed 55 million people. And we did that to ourselves. The Black Death wiped out a third of Europe. We've had nuclear weapons pointed at our own cities for decades. Nuclear weapons pointed at your own cities, mutually assured destruction, Dr. Kim explained cheerfully. The idea was that if anyone attacked us with nuclear weapons, we destroy the whole planet, including ourselves. Kept a peace for about 50 years, you would destroy your own world. Already almost did it once, Rodriguez added. Cuban Missile Crisis 1962 came about as close as you can get without actually ending civilization. Some Russian submarine commander named Vasily Arapov basically saved the world by refusing to launch a nuclear torpedo. Emperor Malachar sat down heavily on his throne of crystallized screams. But you survived these things. Barely, Chun said with a shrug. We're not always smart about it. We had this guy named Hitler who tried to take over the world and kill everyone he didn't Like, took us 6 years and about 70 million deaths to stop him, then we felt so bad about it, we created the United Nations to try to prevent it from happening again. You created an organization to prevent war, multiple organizations. For corrected, the UN, NATO, the European Union, the Geneva Conventions. Turns out when you've seen what happens, when everything goes wrong, you get pretty motivated to make sure it doesn't happen again. We even made it illegal to commit genocide, Dr. Kim added after we saw what we were capable of doing to each other. We decided there had to be some lines you just don't cross. Emperor stared at them in growing horror. You have laws against the complete destruction of species. Of course, what kind of monsters do you think we are? Malachar looked around his throne room with its displays of conquered worlds and crystallized screams, and for the first time in 600 years, he actually saw what he had built. You think I am a monster, he said quietly. Martinez, who had been listening to the conversation while snacking on a protein bar from his pocket, finally spoke up. Look, buddy, I don't know you well enough to judge your character, but this whole setup. He gestured at the displays of destruction. This screams serious emotional issues to me. I am the Emperor of the Dominion, yeah, and being in charge doesn't automatically make you happy or healthy, Dr. Kim said gently. We had this emperor named Marcus Aurelius who figured out that real power comes from helping people, not hurting them. He wrote a whole book about it, very philosophical. You might like it, philosophy, the study of wisdom and ethics, Chun explained, basically thinking about how to live a good life and treat people well. Very popular among people who have actual responsibility for others. But I rule 847 worlds. That's not ruling, Rodriguez said, looking at the displays of destroyed civilizations. That's just breaking things. Any idiot with enough weapons can break things. Building something that actually works takes skill. The emperor felt the foundations of his worldview crumbling. But we are the strongest. We have the greatest weapons. So did the dinosaurs. Akefer pointed out. Didn't work out too well for them in the end. What happened to the dinosaurs? Asteroid impact, Chun replied. Couldn't adapt to changing circumstances. The small, smart mammals inherited the Earth instead. Emperor Malachar looked at his displays of dominion, might, and suddenly saw not strength but fragility. All this power, all this fear, and these small humans from an unknown world were completely unimpressed. What would you do in my position? He asked quietly. The humans looked at each other. Honestly, Chun said, maybe consider retirement, take up a hobby. We had this Roman emperor who gave a power voluntarily and went back to farming, said he was happier growing cabbages than ruling people. You could write a book, Dr. Kim suggested. Work through some of these issues, very therapeutic. Or learn to cook, Martinez added. There's something very satisfying about creating food instead of destroying worlds. Travel, suggested Akefer. See your empire as a tourist instead of a conqueror might give you a different perspective. Fix things instead of breaking them, Rodriguez concluded, more useful, and the job satisfaction is much better. Emperor Malachar, ruler of 847 worlds and terror of the galaxy, put his head in his hands and began to seriously question his life choices.